and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. Oh. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. Bless the reading in John. We go to our first slide, please, Ian. So we're looking at holy moments, opportunities that God uses in our lives, which results from our decisions that we make. And the thing about a holy moment is we don't know what God is going to do until we make that decision. We have no idea how God can use us until we make those decisions. And I think that can be incredibly exciting, but it can also be incredibly daunting to know that God can use you irrespective of your circumstances, irrespective of what you yourself believe. God can still use you, but he does require of us to act. He does require of us to do. And in those times, we get these holy moments. And so we're looking at this over the next 4 weeks. There we go. You have no idea what God can do through one moment of obedience. God can do the miraculous. I don't like being told what to do. Some of that might shock you, but it is true. I like making decisions on my own. I really struggled when I was in the military, and I struggled in the police because I had to be told what to do. And the old saying is, when someone tells you to jump, you ask how high. And there's no opportunities to do otherwise. You are told where to go, and you follow through. But if I make a mistake, if I make my own decision and I make a mistake, well, that's me being silly or stupid. That's just my own fault. But if I have to obey someone else and something bad comes from that, it really does my head in. And you have to, you want that, oh, I told you so. Of course you don't, because we're all loving, caring people. But it's very difficult to have to listen to someone else and do what they tell you, knowing full well that you don't really have control over the outcome. And so whenever I am asked to do something, my first instinct, ashamedly, is to say, is it worth it? Is it worth me doing what you're asking me to do? Now, in our household, we have an our tradition. We basically have said, if the kids want pudding, they need to eat their dinner. We've had this, time and time again. We don't do separate meals. Children nowadays, they don't go hungry. They miss a meal. But that was what we decided when we were going to have children. If you want pudding, you need to eat your dinner. And on one particular day, a certain child, I won't say who, you'll probably know, but I won't say who, dinner was presented, and the question was, what's for pudding? And it was like, why? Well, I want to know if what's before me is worth it. Now, that both upset me, as well as made me go, if you know who I'm talking about, well, there you go. Too much like me. In other words, I don't like what's on my plate, so I want to know if pudding is going to be worth it. We all know this is devil food. Yep. Anyone who eats this stuff should be cast out into the fiery pit. No pudding is worth it. I always like people to say, oh, but if you smother it in butter and cover it in bacon. So in other words, get rid of all the taste. But yeah, is pudding going to be worth eating all of this? Is the thing you are asking me to do, will it be worth it? If you're asking me to do something, will I see an end result that benefits me? Is my obedience worth the risk? And you see, all of us are required to obey. Obey God, obey the law, obey society, obey friends, society. I mean, we don't like to use the word obey. Maybe a better word would be we're encouraged to listen to and act out. That is obey, but we like to soften it up. But we're all under some sort of law that we are required to act out upon. And for most of these things, they are kind of trivial. I'm asking you to do this stuff, and it doesn't make that big of a difference. But every so often, we are asked to do something that can significantly change our lives, that can make it difficult to follow through. And so our reading today is about two people engaged to be married and starting their new life. And whether you've heard the story or not, we're going to look into this very quickly. So I just want to ask everyone, just close your eyes for a second, okay? Everyone just close your eyes. And just imagine you are a handsome young man in a small village. Some of you may need to really imagine. Some of you may not. And a pretty girl catches your eyes. And after some time, you begin to court the girl. You are in love. Can everyone go, ooh? You still have your eyes closed? Yep. The time has finally come, and you get the agreement by your parents to go into a formal process of engagement. You are now, in the eyes of the law and your culture, a married couple. You haven't done the signing of the dotted lines, but you are considered married. So eyes are still closed. You sense the excitement of the future. Things are looking up. Things are wonderful. You're filled with that fuzzy, wonderful feeling. All is well. But before the actual ceremony, the girl says to you, I'm pregnant, and you are not the father. Now open your eyes. What's your first thing you think about? Anyone? First thought. Who is? Typical bloke. Well, who is the father? Anyone else? Don't love me anymore. Anyone else? Betrayal. Think about that. We don't comprehend the situation. In those days, the culture was so different than what we know today, especially here in the West. The requirements by law, the expectations by the culture, and the time in which everything took place was completely different than what we have today. We can read books, but to be honest with you, we cannot comprehend because it is completely different. In today's day and age, people don't commit adultery. They have little flings, weekend romances. But in the eyes of the first century law of Palestine, marriage was sacred. And that meant that Mary had disgraced her soon-to-be husband, disgraced her family, disgraced his family, disgraced friends, and broke the law. Joseph had every right. This is the culture, and we don't get this. Joseph had every right and expectation to have her stoned. That would have been normal. That would have been expected. For what she did, she deserves to be stoned to death. But Joseph was righteous, and he clearly loved Mary. So he intended to divorce her, but do it quietly. Mary, of course, would have had to have left because it was a small village, and people would have known. And maybe the idea of Joseph is, well, she can go somewhere, and maybe she can just lie, say, my husband died. Because she would have been a disgrace to anyone she came in contact with. Life was forever changed for both of them, irrespective of the decision that Joseph was going to make. It was a horrible decision. We could stop there and sort of say, why did God allow this type of thing? But we're going to carry on because this is something bigger and grander than what we know about. What should Joseph do? What should he do? And we carry on with our reading in verse 20. It says, but after he considered this, after he looked at the culture, the surroundings, the situation, the heartbreak, the betrayal, what am I going to do? After he spent time considering this. I don't know if he spoke to friends or family. Don't know if he went to the local priest. We just don't know. But we know Joseph took some time to consider what to happen. Now, I can't imagine what Joseph felt like. He knew he couldn't carry on with Mary. Things would have been too difficult. people would have recognized, wait a minute, you've only been married for 3 months and she's 8 months pregnant. Something's not right here, you know. Or sorry, the other way around. Yeah, no, that would have been right. Yeah, it is 9 months of pregnancy. Losing my mind. And as a bloke, I struggle with that. I would, irrespective of being a religious person, irrespective of trying to do what's right, I would struggle with it. These were God-believing Jews. And for this to happen would have been devastating. But then we get a specific response by the angels. Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you will call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. I would still struggle with that, if I'm honest with you. It was a bit of dodgy cheese, as you get from the film Scrooge. I would have struggled even if an angel said to me, it's okay, don't worry. Joseph had a difficult decision to make. So I want everyone to close their eyes again. Last week, Jane asked a simple question. It wasn't simple, but it was simple, depending on how you look at it. Would you rather have an easy life without Jesus or a hard life with Jesus? So keep your eyes closed. Would you rather have an easy life without Jesus or a hard life with Jesus? Do you trust God? Will you follow? Will you listen? Will you accept? Will you act? Will you give your all to him? Whose will are you putting first, yours or God's? Keeping your eyes closed, I just want you to consider those things. Do you trust God? Joseph was presented with a choice. Trust in the God of his fathers or do what culture, his friends, his family, and possibly his own heart wanted to do. Both would be difficult. Is following Jesus worth it? You can open your eyes now. I don't know what you considered, what you thought, what you felt. Was there something that triggered you and say, okay, I still don't know, I still don't understand. There's still so many things that make me question the world that's happening, the events in my life. I still don't understand. Maybe some of you are going, I get it. I've been following Jesus for 5, 10, 20, 50 years. I've seen the hardship, and I've overcome. By the grace of God, I've overcome, and I've carried on, and I know my God is faithful. But it is still difficult. Some of you have been through hard times, and maybe you still are going through hard times, and you have a choice on how to react, how you go forward. You see, Joseph didn't know what he was getting himself into, but he knew God was with him, and so he obeyed. One opportunity, one moment to make a life-changing decision, a holy moment. Joseph did not know if he went to the right, what impact that would have on not just him, but the rest of society and the world. God called and Joseph answered. God said, do this, and Joseph obeyed. You know, over the last few months, we've looked at God's promises to guide us, strengthen us, encourage us, support us, and to be near to us. As I said before, some of you have been Christian for years, and you've had the assurance from past experience to be able to say, I know God will be with me because I have seen this. Some of you maybe aren't there yet, and you're unsure, and you're uncertain, and you just simply don't know. We've looked at the fact that our faith is not blind. Christian faith is not blind. Science actually benefits the reality that there is a creator God. And we've looked at without our intentional walk, if we are not intentional in going towards Jesus, we can slip back into normality, which benefits no one. But all of this is so that when God says go, we can follow. We have the path before us. Which way will you take? And the thing is, this isn't, I think I said this the other week, you don't just take it once and that's it. Each day you're being asked, who will you follow? Who will you trust? There's a saying, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. And what it means by that is, when you are in the pit, in the mire, and everything is going off, you always hear people say, God save me. God help me. I'm always tempted to say, why should he? Why do you have to call to God when things are going horrible? Why are you not calling to God when things are going well? I had a long conversation with someone about that very same thing. He said, I don't believe in God because of the things that are happening in this world. And so I said to her, have you had such a horrible life? And she said, no, I've got a wonderful family, wonderful friends, wonderful job. I said, and so you're praising God for that? She said, well, no, because I don't believe in God, because of all the bad things happen. And I said, well, wait a minute, that's a completely different thing. You expect God to do everything for you and make your life well, but at the same point, you don't take the hardships that come with it. We each have a journey that we have to make. But over the next few weeks, Christians around the world are going to be looking at Christmas. And I still struggle with the fact that we call it the holidays. It's not a holiday. For those of you who had children, imagine saying, we are going to take your child, and in 33 years, that child is going to be crucified. This baby was born to die for us. The story of the birth, though, is preceded by those willing to make unbelievable choices, to follow where God calls us, to put his will over ours, to trust and obey even when things look tough. I'm nearly done here. I'm fully convinced God speaks to every single person here. I'm fully convinced God speaks to everyone in the world. And maybe as a Christian, God has been saying to you, things need to change. God might be saying to you, I really want you to do this. God might be saying to you, you've been living this life, which is great and wonderful, but I've got better things for you. And I am asking you to trust me. I am asking you to obey. Because if you are a Christian, if you've accepted Jesus into your life, you have said, not my will, but yours be done. And God will not leave you alone. What I mean by that is if you've accepted him, he is always going to have that little knocking on the door, the little niggling, that little, God, just leave me alone. I don't like speaking to those people. And he's saying, go, speak to them. Go, do this thing. Go and sign up here. Go and obey me, because that is what I am asking of you. And it may be difficult, and you may be uncertain, and you may be frustrated because you're thinking, God, I'm weak, I'm tired, I'm older, I've done all this stuff before, I just want an easy life. Easy life or a hard life with Jesus? Being a Christian, you can have an easy life. I do believe it. God does say he will promise to give us. But I also believe that if we are being proactive, life is going to be tough because we are willingly going against the grain. And if you're not a believer, if you're not a follower, if you simply don't know, I'm fully convinced God is speaking to you. And he's been calling you to open the door of your life. And you have this opportunity, this holy moment, to actually make a difference in your life, to actually change, to let go of uncertainty and follow him. Because I promise you, it is worth it. And going to church, and I've said this before, and it's one of the sayings I do actually love because I stole it from my other minister. You know, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than going to Pizza Hut makes you a pizza. Some of you have been coming to church, but you still don't have a relationship with God. And God is saying, it's time. It is time, because I have something planned for you that is immeasurably more than you could ever possibly imagine. And it is worth it. And it's not going to be Brussels sprouts. It's going to be a steak pie or a mushroom pie for the vegetarians. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. It is worth it. I promise you that. It is worth it. We've got a song now before